You know the phrase, I don't do Windows? I don't do PowerPoint. Dick selected my topic, that's Dick for you. He told me what I was supposed to talk about. And so what I'm going to talk about is to adhere to what he told me to talk about, which is what I learned that goes deep. I'm glad that he gave this topic to me because it forced me to focus on things that I had learned through my life and to relive many learning, teachable, and defining moments that go deep. But because of time, I'm going to focus on two areas that have been a part of my ongoing learning that goes deep. First, servant leadership must begin from within and radiate outward. And secondly, servant leadership is a transformational process because to live is to serve. My first area, servant leadership, begins from within and radiates outward. Who am I? I didn't know that Dick was going to go through part of my life history for you. But the question is very important. Who am I standing here talking to you? Well, much of my thinking, my beliefs, my values are based on my father and mother's deep spiritual and religious convictions. My parents, despite their limited opportunities and deferred dreams, dared to believe, to care, to act for their souls, for the souls of their children, for their church and the community. And now that I look back and reflect on that caring nature and how they acted upon it, that makes me realize that they were the first example of servant leadership in my life. And what I learned from my parents goes very deep. They had great expectations for their children. In their wise wisdom, they prepared us to live in a society that did not always treat us as equals. My parents, like many African American parents, grilled in us that we could not be just as good as, we had to be better than. They seamlessly passed on their beliefs, their values, their caring natures to their children, and we were able to take life as we found it and accept their mandate to do something of yourself, to serve God and the community. My leadership principles and continued professional growth, however, are a result of my learning experiences and relationships with a series of caring bosses and supervisors, enriching teachers, leaders who espouse servant leadership, warm and engaging mentors, and a host of like-minded, caring friends. Effective leadership begins from within and radiates outside. I became aware of this principle when I was a teenager, a lesson that grew deep and is the core of my being. I grew up in the city of Reading, Pennsylvania, a city of about 120,000 population, which included about 2,000 African Americans. The largest ethnic group was German, followed by Eastern Europeans, much like Milwaukee. After my parents, there were two individuals who had the greatest influence on my early life: the pastor of our church and his cousin, our family doctor. Dr. Goodwin formed a scholarship club. He had dreams for our future and created activities that broadened our horizons and helped us develop new and expansive views of ourselves way beyond what any of us thought was possible. He took us on field trips to colleges and universities, and one such trip was to the commencement exercises at Howard University in Washington, D.C., his alma mater. We teenagers were in awe, coming from a little town in Pennsylvania, of the beautiful, large, expansive campus, the good-looking guys who were students, the well-dressed in those days women who were students, the professors, and of course the big city of Washington, D.C. The experience was electrifying. Since that experience, I have attended many, many commencement exercises, but I do not remember any of the speakers or what they have said. However, that day, Dr. Mordecai Johnson, the president of Howard University, was the speaker, and he spoke to the graduates on the theme, "It doth not yet appear what ye shall be," Would you please write that down? It doth not yet appear what ye shall be. That was a defining moment for me, a lesson that went very deep to this very day. It has become the substance for my continual inner journey, a journey about my own identity, my own worth, and a commitment to be forever becoming, because it doth not yet appear what ye shall be. We cannot serve others and attempt to enable them to be their very best if we're not clear about who we are. If we feel that we are what we ought to be, then we will remain where we are, and we will not look for any changes or improvement in our lives. We need humility to see ourselves clearly, and if not, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. We have to know who we are. It's tough for our associates to give of themselves to a process or to follow someone who does not have the sense of himself or herself. As a servant leader, we must be able to talk clearly and convincingly about who we are, why we exist, and how we operate. You see, servant leadership is more about being than doing. For me, my identity does not depend upon title, degree, or function. It depends only on the simple fact that I am a child of God, who is valued and treasured for who I am and what I am. And when a servant leader knows that, really knows that, the classroom is different, the office is different, the hospital is different, because as the leader, we value and treasure the people we serve because each of them is a child of God. I pray for humility because I must treat everyone as a child of God. As Maya Angelou once said, "Nothing human can be alien to me," end quote. The essence and the cornerstone of servant leadership is based on knowing who you are and what you stand for. And in our private life and thought and deed, we must not violate the values which we embrace in our role as a servant leader. The integrity of the act cannot be separated from the integrity of the person. We must seek the truth about ourselves, and the simple fact is we must accept ourselves and take responsibility for our actions and our reactions. We have to remain connected to our values, principles, and beliefs, and we must also be connected to our associates and to the institutions we serve. The present state of our society demands major self-leadership. All of us must have more accountability to take control of our own lives, control of self, not control of others. We must continuously look within and decide what we want, what we value, and who we are, and what we are willing to be courageous about, because it doth not yet appear what ye shall be. Unless we understand the vision that motivates us to lead, unless we understand the mission that ignites us, unless we understand the values that empower us, how can we make courageous choices necessary in a chaotic world? We have to look within ourselves for guidance in creating an ethical self. Embarking on self-knowledge, self-renewal, reinventing ourselves, whatever we wish to call it, the process is a lifelong, continuous journey, and we have to be comfortable with the reality that the journey is not always easy and smooth. People who cannot look at themselves squarely in the face or engage in the process of self-renewal must be content with borrowed positions or postures, secondhand ideas, and fitting in instead of fitting out. It is not so much what we do as what we are that counts. Our associates learn and respond to what we are. All the techniques and all the tools that fill leadership and management books are no substitute for who we are and what we are. Our associates do not follow our techniques. They follow us, our message, and our embodiment of that message. At the core of our forever becoming servant leaders is a need to connect our voice to our touch, and doing that what we say we will do, and finding our voice is a matter of searching, a continuous journey about our own identity and our own worth. As Parker Palmer defines the journey, he says, and I quote, "A great spiritual gift that comes as one takes the inward journey to know for certain who I am," end quote. The wise Dalai Lama clarifies this journey in this way. He says, "If you seek enlightenment for yourself, simply to enhance yourself and your position, you miss the purpose. If you seek enlightenment for yourself to enable you to serve others, you are with purpose." I'm going to repeat that. If you seek enlightenment for yourself simply to enhance yourself and your position, you miss the purpose. If you seek enlightenment for yourself to enable you to serve others, you are with purpose. And that brings me to my second area, a lesson learned that goes deep. Servant leadership is a transformational process. The deepest part of human nature is that which urges people, each of us, to rise above our present circumstances and to transcend our nature. If we can appeal to it, we tap into a whole new source of human motivation. The servanthood of leadership needs to be felt, understood, believed, and practiced. And if we are able to be faithful and transformational, we have to do that. As Greenleaf once wrote, and it was quoted earlier today, it brings with that natural feeling that one wants to serve and to serve first. He continues, "The conscious choice to serve brings one to aspire to lead. The difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant. First, to make sure that the other person's highest priority needs are being served." Now, servant leadership is not a quick fix, nor is it something that can be quickly instilled within an institution. It must be transformational. And this transformational aspect is seen in Greenleaf's 3 pragmatic questions about outcomes that can be measured. First, he asks, do those who are being served while they are being served grow in the process, end quote. In other words, are the people we're leading become better people as a result of our leadership? Do our followers grow professionally, intellectually, and spiritually? Is growth beginning now and not 5 years from now? The second question that Greenleaf asks is whether those being served become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants. The first part of that question is another way of asking whether followers are empowered. And the last part, quotes, more likely themselves to become servants, reminds us that research shows a majority of leaders have become leaders based upon experiences with other leaders. This suggests that people who are exposed to the servant leadership as followers have a better chance of becoming servant leaders themselves. Another lesson that I learned goes deep, comes from Peter Drucker, one of my many, many mentors and a favorite person of mine and Dick. The late Peter Drucker said, "We must always focus on the strengths of our associates, and then their weaknesses become irrelevant." That's another thing I want you to put down. We must always focus on the strengths of our associates, and then their weaknesses become irrelevant. He further said, and I quote, "We must point them in the direction where their strengths lie, and in the direction which their personal, our own personal, and the group's potential lies. While we as leaders know that we ultimately are responsible, we're not afraid of the strengths of our associates. We want strong associates. We encourage them, push them, indeed glory in them, because we hold ourselves responsible for them, for their mistakes, but also able to see their triumphs as our own triumphs rather than as threats. We must need and be able to have independent, able, self-assured people around us because we care and we serve so that they themselves can be self-assured, independent, and able to become servant leaders through this transformational process. The third question that Greenleaf asks reminds us that the decisions we make as leaders have consequences. He asks, and I quote, "What is the effort on the least privileged in society? will he or she benefit or at least not be further deprived? End quote. This means that a leader who makes an organizational decision should consider the effect on the least powerful in the organization. The late Eleanor Roosevelt said, "A good leader inspires followers to have confidence in the leader." A great leader, and I'd like to substitute the word a servant leader, is a person who inspires people to have confidence in themselves. So a good leader wants people to have confidence in him or her, but a servant leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. Another lesson I learned that goes deep in this transformational process is the use of power. The ultimate task of servant leadership is to create human energies and shared power. The primary purpose of power is not to use it, but to share it. And a special kind of power develops when it is shared as compared to when it is used. Sharing credit is also an example of power being shared. We also share power by reminding our associates what is special about them, that they are there because they make a vital contribution to the organization. They begin to see the power they have because there is a reason for their existence. We must recognize that our role as a servant leader involves more than just people who do the job. I want to go off my remarks here because in the New York Times article yesterday, there was an announcement that Ford Motor Company is ready to he's within the company, to replace Alan Mulally when he retires in the fall. I met Alan Mulally and had spent time with him, and at one point in a speech that he gave where I was present, he said this. Now, he probably didn't realize he was being a servant leader when he said it, but he said, "Success for a company or an organization relates to 3 P's: people, product, profit." And he said, if you treat people well and let them know that they are vital to the company and the company cannot exist without them, they are your first priority. And if you treat them well, they will make a great product because they believe that they're a part of a larger mission. They won't be careless about what they're doing. And third, when they make the best possible product, you don't have to worry about profit. And he showed the world that he did not need to take a loan from the government. He was the one company during our recession period that did not borrow money. His people brought the company back to its success. I'm sorry for going off, but I just read that yesterday and I thought of Alan Mulally. The other thing about that, I think when you're a servant leadership, you don't seem to grow old. Because I looked at the picture, they had Alan Mulally and his supposed successor, who was as handsome as the day is long. But Alan still looked young beside him. I love to look at good-looking men, as my friend would attest to that. We have to see ourselves, and I'm going to be finished in a minute, we have to see ourselves as part of our associates' transformation, and that they are becoming whole as individuals, and how the work environment is contributing to that process, to their wholeness. Are these people growing as individuals who contribute at work, at home, and with the community? Do we have a positive influence on their growth? At the core, servant leadership is a transformational approach to life and work. In essence, a way of being, that the potential for creating positive change throughout our society is servant leadership. The transformational servant leader knows the difference between the way things are and the way they ought to be. We must be committed to a transformational process. We are not bystanders or simply holders of positions. Our leadership responsibility is for the long term, not for the short-term benefits. I quote Waldo Emerson, who said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." And in closing, Robert Greenleaf was never asked to summarize his life, but he did so on one occasion on the fateful day in October 1968, when the phrase servant leader popped in his head for the first time. And he told his wife, Esther, quote, That phrase pretty much sums up everything I've been trying to communicate. I'm really talking about love, but the word has lost much of its meaning these days. So this may be a way to get people to listen, end quote. To live is to serve, and peace. I see you coming up on me, so I'm going to get out of the way.